Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about how to relocate overseas. Myself, I lived in Israel for 3 years. That's why I'm wearing my favorite shirt from my favorite restaurant, Mike's Place, which is located in Tel Aviv, of course, from the beach. Great food, I love it, but oh, I miss the food over there. I got to go back there one day. But anyway, um, when I lived there, it was on a little different circumstances. I went to school there, and the process is a little different than what I'm going to talk about. But there are some similarities I want to share with you guys. So basically, you have to take some few things in consideration. I'm going to talk about those things, some things you need to do when you're moving overseas. Um, just a few little tidbits of information for those who want to go overseas for whatever reason. You're just sick and tired of the things going on in your country, or maybe you want to get maybe just that's your retirement place or what have you. You have to take a few things in consideration before you make that move. Um, so we're going to talk about those things. So let's just get into it right now. Okay, like anything that I've talked previously in regards to travel, you're going to have to look at the country as a whole, in terms of crime, in terms of political, economic, social environment. You're going to have to look at, housing, you know, the society as a whole. But I want to talk about something that I hear a lot of people spread all over the internet, and that is, you want to make U.S. dollars because the U.S. dollars stretch further in certain countries. That is not necessarily true, and this is based upon the whole conversion rate. Here's the problem: one, that conversion rate fluctuates. Okay, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I know that for a fact because when I lived in Israel, there was times it was good, and there was times it was like, oh crap, it dropped. And this is usually a daily thing. So sometimes you're doing good and you're making money, and sometimes you're not. That's one thing you got to keep in consideration. Second thing you got to keep in consideration is taxes. If you're living in a country under a particular visa, you might be considered a tax resident. And with that being said, you're getting dual tax. So if you're getting dual tax, like for example, if you're on a digital nomad visa and you're working, you might be taxed from at your home country if you're working a remote job, and you also can be taxed by the government, the country you're staying in. Like for example, Brazil. Brazil taxes the crap out of everybody. So now you have that issue. So your dollar is not really stretching; it's starting to shrink. Okay, and depending on what type of job you have, it doesn't necessarily put you on the 1%. If you're working a minimum wage job, it ain't working. The math ain't gonna be mathing at the end of the day. Especially when you're spending your money and stuff, and then you gotta get new clothes, hygiene stuff. The math is not gonna overall be mathing. So those are things you're gonna have to look at. Plus, it's also when it comes to tax season, do you qualify for the foreign exemption, the foreign tax exemption plan? Because there's various qualifications in that, and do you meet that? Like uninterrupted for 330 days overseas. Now, for me, when I was deployed to Iraq, I met that requirement because only was allowed to have 2-week vacations. And after that, I had to go back in the battlefield. And I was there for the full year. So I met those requirements. And I was tax exempt. That sucks, being away from your home country for that long. You only get 2 weeks. So those are things you're going to have to look at when you're going overseas and you're trying to make US dollars, stuff like that. So don't put a lot of steam into that, because a lot of that, there's a whole bunch of factors in that. Even though I mentioned that the US dollar is strong, but there's some variables of it. When I look for a job, I look for a job that does pay US dollars, and generally that's limited to basically either working as a contractor for military or U.S. government, working for directly for the U.S. government, like State Department, or you're working for the United Nations or some of their organizations, and they have like 171 sub agencies under them, like International Red Cross, Interpol, UNICEF, things like that. If they're paying in U.S. dollars now, and that's something you really have to do research and look at. I would do that, but like again, you have to be careful. You have to see what, in terms of what they're offering in terms of pay and tax exemption and things like that. I'm quite sure there may be some tax exemptions because of their agency status or what have you. But those are things, again, you would have to look at because, someone like me who has a master's, 2 bachelors, a bunch of cybersecurity certifications, do I actually want to move overseas to try to take some remote job from the U.S. making $15 an hour? Absolutely not. I want something that's in my skill level, because I worked hard for my degrees. I want to make that, still want to make 6 figures, So I'm going to continue to make that type of money when I'm overseas and be in that higher caliber type of position, because those weigh heavy for some reason. They weigh heavy when you're overseas. They're very well respected positions. So I want to still be in that status, so I don't want to lose my status as well. So keep that in mind when you decide to go overseas. I mean, a lot of people just want to go overseas for paradise. You got to be careful that paradise can entrap you and take away things that you should have been doing. A lot of guys I see so desperate to move in paradise, they're willing to take anything, but they don't realize what are you supposed to be in life? Are you willing to give that up for paradise? Because you can be losing a hell of a lot of things, really, over this YouTube trend of going overseas and trying to live this life, and it's not what you cracked up to be. Because believe it or not, there's some people who lived overseas, now they're coming back home to the U.S. Now, the good thing for working for like the UN and State Department is they'll pay for your move. That's a cool thing. So you can basically just pack up your home here and move it over there. You just got to figure out what are their requirements, or if they even will pay for that stuff. It's, you just have to look at, when you sign on, what they're able to do. And that's something you can just do research on. Something you can ask the recruiter, or, as you're going through the process, whatever position you're going for and where you're going to be stationed, and, packing up your bags and move. I've seen a couple of YouTube clips of people from the United Nations who are moving overseas from the U.S. and they're packing up their home and their car, and they're just moving overseas, and they're picking up, and the company and the government's picking up the tab. So that's another beautiful thing about that. Or if you have a company that's willing to do that, they may pick up a certain percentage of the move as you're moving overseas. So that's another reason why I choose particular agencies to do that, because they'll pay for your move. We are creatures of comfort, so there's going to be some differences when you go to places, in different countries. You may not get that same treatment like you got in the U.S. Case in point, when I lived in Israel, the drainage system was horrible when it rained. Streets were flooded. Literally, there were guys surfboarding. I had guys literally surfboarding on the streets when it rained. And this can be a disastrous thing, because one year there was an underground garage and there was people in it, 3 people in it, and the elevator got stuck, water seeped in, and unfortunately people in there drowned to death. So that was a tragedy. You have to understand that you're not going to get the comforts of home when you're overseas. Mail system was horrible to a certain extent. Um, Mail, I had to go across town to go get my mail when it was supposed to go here. It's a pain in the butt. Um, Sometimes my card may have gotten stuck in the ATM machine and I got to figure out how to get it. That was a pain in the butt. But just a whole bunch of things. You have to deal with some inconveniences when you're overseas, and you have to keep that in mind. Um, we're creatures of comfort. Electrical grid can go out easy. You may not get bad Wi-Fi. Um, Buying a home may not come with everything that we normally would get in a house when we're buying in the United States. Um, those are things you're going to have to look at. So there's going to be a bunch of inconveniences you're going to have to deal with when you're moving overseas. So you got to have to weigh in what can I deal with, what I can't deal with, and figure out from there whether moving to this particular country is going to be worth it or not. In closing, I want to talk about something that's an issue, and that is the overpopulation of certain location because it causes a gentrification on certain cities. And I'm going to use Medellin, Colombia, for example. A lot of guys are going over there for the adult pleasure lifestyle, which this channel doesn't support. Um, and with that, people are wanting to buy real estate, so like Airbnbs and stuff like that, so they can have a place to go to when they're in town. And because of that, a lot of real estate agents and other goods and services have increased because they're seeing more of the US dollar come in, and now it prices out the locals, and there's a resentment of that. And we have to be very mindful and very sensitive about these things because, this is their home. We don't like it when it's done to us, then we shouldn't be doing it to them. And that's also happening in places like Spain and Portugal. That's why with me, I have different locations where if I wanted to move somewhere, it's not just Latin America, I have places in Europe. Research, research, research. I pound this tremendously in people's heads because a lot of people think that the dollar won't stretch in Europe, which is false because even though the euro is stronger than the US dollar, the cost of living in certain countries is lower where your dollar can stretch. And that's what a lot of people don't see because they don't do proper research. And there are countries you can go to where your dollar is going to stretch. The real estate market over there is great, but people don't do that. So, there are the hidden gems that are there. Um, but like I said, research, 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 research. And a lot of people don't do that. I do. So that's why I have my little places that I'm going to be going next year to check out these places and see if they're going to be fitting for me if I wanted to, say, get a hideaway, a one bedroom hideaway if I want to go and chill for a couple of weeks and stuff like that. So something that's not imposing, something that people don't even recognize. So those are the things I just wanted to say. And for moving overseas overall, again, you got to do a lot of research and figure out whether this is going to be the move for you, because you make a move that's going to be pretty a solid move. Like if you go there and you move everything there and things don't work out, you're kind of stuck. And that's a big financial boo-boo if you go there and it's not a good fit. So hope you liked the video. Hit the like button if you did, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so, and I'll catch you guys next time.